Okay, hello, Ivor, and hi, Ivor. First,
Hey, man, how are you doing?
good. How are you? Okay, and our interview this week, our special guest is Liz Janik. This is going to be a very CFNY centric interview. Obviously, Liz, you've got a whole bunch of other things in your career, which we'll touch on, but it's a lot about CFNY. We do have a couple of updates first that Ivor wanted to tell everybody about. First of all, well, I guess for people, because this is not going to be available till Saturday, which is the day after what was supposed to be the Buffalo screening of the documentary.
Right.
But that's been put off. Ivor, I'll let you explain.
Yeah,
that.
I mean, we're very sorry about this and the situation in Buffalo. A number of things in place, some market conditions. A band called Cake playing the same night as the CFNY event, and Cake were a big CFNY band back in the day. They took a lot of tickets out of the market, the hockey playoffs, what have you. That's all good. So the event, we've been contacted by Donnie over at Town Ballroom, and the event is being postponed to another date. But we are imminently looking at our announcement for a PBS screening, and we'll be working directly with PBS out of Buffalo for a special screening event that we are putting together with them. It'll be part of the documentary, will be part of a pledge drive, and there's some more information on that. I don't want to let out of the bag at a later date, but it's quite exciting that we'll finally have that presence in the U.S. We are just trying to come up with another date. It will be later this summer, but we will contact everybody or let everybody know as soon as we can. So our sincere apologies about having to put the Buffalo date on hold. We were so much looking forward to being down there. It is, in essence, my second home. I visit there all the time. And I know Scott and Liz are your regular travelers down there as well. So we want to be there. And I have a pile of CFNY merch ready to sell for you folks, too. So we're not forgetting about you. So there you go.
Also, if you did buy a ticket and you do want your refund point of purchase, where you purchase the tickets, I guess, which was probably Town Ballroom.
Through Town Ballroom. So they will provide refunds if you've got other plans this summer, so you can do that. But hang on to it if you can. We will imminently have new information on what is coming next. Well, the other thing you should be aware of, though, is our Brampton date on Saturday, June the 6th at the Cyril Clark Theater is on. We are still a 100% a go for that. There still are tickets available, so you can log on to the city of Brampton, and we will contact you through all of our socials to give you more information. But tickets are available for next Saturday night. It's Scott, Liz, myself, David Marsden, Alan Cross, Fred Patterson, Humble Howard will be in the house. I've just heard that Walter Banafra will be in the house, and our wonderful former head of production, Maureen Bully, will be there. The person that gave you all of those fantastic mosquito repellent spots will be in the house on Saturday, June the 6th. Still haven't confirmed that pool party over at Fred's, but we're working on it. And we have that special tour poster for everybody who attends the event as well.
I wanted to mention just quickly, Ivor, is the mosquito repellent spot commercial that won the award in New York. That anniversary is coming up, and it's coming up in a couple of weeks. So we're going to play that commercial. If you haven't heard it in years, we're going to play that on the podcast here.
I had a request too. I got a request today from a listener asking if we can play the Sizzling Summer promotion. So if we can dig that one up, let's see if we can play that for them. I mean, we are in summer weather now, and God damn it, we can't play music on this podcast. So, but we can play promos. Right, Mr. Copyright people, we can play promos, so you can't do anything about that. Anyway.
You'll have to play the Catch Us If You Can promo, too, because that was such a mainstay of our format. We only played a song once a day, and if you heard it the second time, you got $102.
And we've mentioned a few times that, the different promos, the creative writing, the production, the promotions and marketing that we did in the station, it was hardly touched on at all in the documentary. There just wasn't time, and we feel terrible about that. But that was a mini series to cover it all, right? To cover it all. Liz, I was going to say quickly, and we're talking about the Brampton final screening in a theater screening. Is I remember early on, you went down for your interview for the documentary, and I remember talking to you or messaging you. And I remember one of the early times Ivor and myself and Alan as executive producers got to see some of the footage early on. Here's a rough cut, guys. And I remember seeing you, Liz, going, oh my God, you're fantastic on camera. You're just so, articulate and eloquent. And, some people on camera just don't carry it off, and some people do. And anyway, you were great on the doc, by the way. So.
Oh, that's great. I chose radio for a choice because of voice, not visual. So I'm really happy to hear that.
It worked out well. I mean, quite honestly, you're a very, very prominent in the film, and you've got lots of great points and lots of great stories in there. So it all worked out well. You are one of the stars of that documentary, most certainly.
Yeah, we want to revisit some of that. So let's just dive in first of all, and let's go way back. And the first time you discovered, before you worked there, how did you discover the station?
Well, the very first program director of CFNY was a guy named David Pritchard. And for those who are old enough to remember Chum FM in its heyday as a progressive freeform station, he was the all-night guy. And I was a super huge fan of his. And when I got to Ryerson, I wanted to be a DJ. And at Ryerson, they said, oh, no, you can't be a DJ. You're a girl. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I phoned David Pritchard and I said that to him. And he said, oh, that's nonsense. Bring me a tape. I showed up the next day with a tape. And later he said to me, people always say they want to be on it, but they never show up with a tape. So he ended up becoming my mentor and a family friend. And when he took over the station is when I first became aware of it. And he wanted to hire me, but because that station started off as Chick FM, hiring women, not trained broadcasters, it's more than, body parts. They wouldn't let women on the air. So the position he found for me was to write the script and choose the music for the classical music show. And so I did that for at least a year and a half. And then things changed enough that Marsden started putting me on the all-night show intermittently. And eventually I got the full-time gig.
Interesting you mentioned the classical show, Liz, because my very first job at the station, besides coming in and being somewhat of an intern, but my first paid job at the station was operating your classical show.
Thanks for doing that. I played violin from grade 1 till the end of high school, and then I had to choose between a new violin and a stereo, and I guess you know what I chose.
Of course.
I am today.
It was challenging, because it was 6 a.m. It was Saturday and Sunday mornings, I think it was, at 6 a.m. to get, so, being a young guy at that point in time, I was probably up well past 11 o'clock, maybe, till the bars closed, and then come straight into the radio station and pull up a curtain on the floor and get ready to do the classical show, which I did for the first couple of years of my tenure at CFNY.
Back in the reel-to-reel days.
Yes.
Yes. Well,
yeah, we ran the reels. Ran the reels, and then many records on Deutsche Grammophon and Telarc and London Records that we would play.
So you both worked, of course, at the Yellow House, the famous little Yellow House. Tell us more about your experience in that house and the facilities and the conditions, Liz, as you remember.
Well, I remember David saying it was the dirtiest place ever. I didn't have anything to compare it to, so I didn't have that takeaway. But working overnights and being in a small house, one of the things at the house, so I had an open window through the bathroom. I went from the bedroom to the bathroom because it was basically a 1.5-story house. I would put a mic outside the window at first thing in the morning when the birds started to chirp. So every time I did a break, I had chirping birdies back there. And
that's great.
The other thing about that house was that, well, as the station and the all-night show got more popular, people would try to break into the house by climbing up onto the shed, up to the window that was the bathroom window. So it was kind of crazy time back then. And it was the same when my first year. Actually, I'd like to mention how I got hired, because sure. I had been working in the microcomputer industry and doing really well. If you held a Byte magazine or a personal computing magazine back in those days, I was the distributor for it. And my parents, because I was a new mom and a single mom, they said, you have to choose between computing and radio. You've tried radio for all these years. Maybe you should give it up. So we made a deal. If I did not have a full-time radio job by January 1st, I'd give it up. December 31st, Marsden called me and gave me the all-night gig.
Wow.
So talk about
Cutlet
a
flow.
cosmic kiss.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's funny you mentioned too that with those windows open at 340 Main Street too, because it was a lot to do with the air conditioning that never worked very well in there too. So you had to have those windows open. But I didn't ever experience having listeners climbing up the side of the building. Certainly remember lots of listeners downstairs pounding on the door, but I didn't know about people climbing up the side of the building.
I want to make a request.
They could just climb right into the control room to make a request.
Well, I think one of the reasons why the all-night show became my all-night show became so recognized is because that year, 1980, MTV, that's not quite the multicultural station in Toronto, started a new show called the All Night TV Show with Chuck the Security Guard.
Right.
Right.
Hey, you. And what back in those days, they had access to all the old time movies and commercials and things, and they'd run them through the night. And it turned out that they discovered people would be listening to CFNY and watching these old TV shows at the same time. So I ended up becoming a character on the show and actually visiting the show and staying with Ryerson behind the camera and that kind of stuff. It was
Oh.
an amazing time when you consider all the talent. Jim Carrey's first appearance was on that. And so I think that's partly what made the all night show well known was that I had that sort of 1 year of dual platforms.
Did
I
you
don't.
at the time also have, it sounds like, well, I'm only speculating, but you must have had some real um, diehard followers, I would think, like people that were your regulars that would call you all the time.
Oh, that's for sure. And the one thing that helped me through that is to take people's names, because if I had their name and where they came from, I could remember their stories.
Right.
And to be honest with you, that's how I met my husband, Peter Goodwin,
Through the
because
phones.
through the phone speak and all his friends. I remember complaining to my mother at that time. Everybody I knew had two names. You know, David Haydu was Geets Romo.
Yes.
Right.
David Height was the doctor. Peter
Right.
Goodwin was the mad frog. So everybody had these strange names.
Dave Booth was Daddy Cool, right?
Daddy Cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
Brad
and Dad,
McNally was Dick, right? It was-
I knew Daddy Cool from when I was a kid because I used to go sitting in the local radio station in Kitchener-Waterloo called Chime, and
Yeah.
he was working there then. So that's one of the first characters I met from the station was Daddy Cool back in the day.
And how did Dave get to the station? Were you there before him or sort of concurrently? Do you recall that at all?
Which Dave?
Dave Booth, Daddy Cool.
Uh, I think it's a concurrent thing or a bit of an overlap. I think I was there first, but as you guys know, the station had many programming regulations about what we could play and what we had to play.
Yes.
So we could not repeat a song more than once a day was one of the rules. And then we had to have a classical music show and we had the reggae show. And so there were a lot of shows that were generated because of the license requirements by
For sure.
by the CRTC.
And another question for you, and you've mentioned David Pritchard and David Marsden. Of course, I knew you, you were very helpful to me because I was just a young punk at the time. But who are some of the other folks at the station that you had friendships with or that you were tight with at the time?
Do you remember Carrie Keeler, the receptionist?
Absolutely, I remember Carrie.
She was,
Carrie had her little red Mustang, as I recall.
yes, she did. And that boyfriend that was a session singer, I think. And so she was really good to me. I got to know Hedley really well. I got to know Brad really well. But with the all night shift, I didn't get to know that many more people. I remember you, though, especially when you had your mouth wired shut and you could only eat.
Oh yeah, that was that was the year that was
What?
my summer of stupidity. I had I turned 21 and there was a house party that I was at and I probably had a few too many brown pops. And there was a guy in a white leather jacket who was leaving the party. And I said, "You've got my buddy Dave's jacket on. Give it back." And he just ignored me and kept walking to his car. So yours truly, at age 20 or 21, threw a beer bottle at his car. Well, that didn't go down so well. So he came up to me, one punch right in the side of the head or face. And there goes my jaw. I'm wired for six weeks. As it turned out, the guy had the exact same leather jacket as my friend, so it was all for naught. So anyway,
I,
Oh
I
man.
either have never heard that or forgot that
right,
story.
and
That's crazy.
I lost a ton of weight. I remember trying to put, experiment with everything under the planet that I could put in the blender. It was like chili and you name it or whatever. But that was, yeah, I made some terrible mistakes that year. And I got to tell you, I mean, I even almost lost my job at CFNY at one point because I had put some information on the air that was, it was the wrong information. I thought that Brian Eno was coming to town to play a concert, which of course Brian Eno never played any concerts. And James Scott went nuts on it on the air, whoever it was. And then David sort of like read me the riot act and told me I had to either pick it up or I'm going to be out of there. And then like when we had a meeting about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months later, he goes, I've never seen anybody turn things around like you did. So, I mean, it was such a wake up call for me in life. And I use that for other people down the road that, worked for me that said, look, he gave me the opportunity to clean my life up and get my act together. And I took it so seriously that because the job was a dream job for me. It was the job that I always wanted.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Glad it worked out well.
Liz, I bet you don't remember the first song you played on CFNY.
That's absolutely true. I don't.
No,
I
don't worry,
remember
Liz. Nobody else does. So,
Well, the weird thing is, I remember the very first track that was queued up for the very first time I had my own radio show at Laurier University
Yeah.
in Waterloo. And some guy said, "Oh, we'll help you. We'll queue up your first record." And I was getting ready to go to air. And then I looked at what they put on the turntable. They put on the band The Fugs.
oh, was it Homemade
And,
Shit?
and it was Coca-Cola Douche.
Oh, that's
All
just
I,
another
all
great
I knew
song.
is not for me. So I think I put on
Oh,
John
man.
Barleycorn or
Oh
something.
my
Now
God.
you got to put that in the playlist that we put out every
I
week.
will. I absolutely will. I remember Al Spring used to joke about that. He said he was the morning man, of course, and he said he get people calling. He goes, "Yeah, can you play a little Coca-Cola Douche on the program or whatever?" And it's like, oh my God.
So, Liz, let me ask this question. You're doing the overnight show at CFNY. This is 1980, basically, 1979, 1980.
Started,
And,
yeah,
and
80.
it's interesting you talked about just a moment ago about the place for women in radio. And I remember going to Humber College Radio. Phil Stone's the director of that program, and I remember sitting in my first class, and he was saying, "Hands up if you're a woman, and ladies in the class." And he said to the class, he said, "There's no place for women in radio. Maybe you might get a job in news." And I think he was trying to just be blunt, like that's the situation. But I thought, God, that is the worst, rudest thing I've ever heard. So my question to you, and obviously there's so much you've done in radio and for women in radio and the business, et cetera, et cetera. But at that time, doing overnights, were there any other women that you remember doing, radio shows, proper radio shows in radio at the time?
There was on CKFM, there was a woman that did overnights. I remember her first name. It was Peggy. And then I think the next woman to step into an actual DJ role was Ingrid Schumacher. She started off in traffic at Chum FM.
Right.
And actually, when I was thinking of becoming a radio person, like a DJ, I went to talk to the general manager of the local Kitchener station. And he said the same thing. There's no future for you as a female in radio. And I'm a teenager. We're rebellious by nature. We're strong-minded by nature. So, of course, when I got to Toronto and David Pritchard said, "No, you can do it." So that was really wonderful. And there was another woman in New York City that was famous. She was called the Nightbird. So there was a beginning of women on the air. In Toronto, Toronto was one of the last cities to put women on the air, and that's all because of the Chick FM disaster. So they
I
said
kind of
women can't appeal.
look back on that, and it was the same for the record companies too. And I sit there and look at all these old photos, and it's kind of disgusting, to be honest with you. I remember seeing, a shot of all of the DJs at Chum FM. I'm like, where's the woman? And then here's another shot of the A&M convention. There was like maybe one woman and 30 guys in the pictures. And it just, you sit back and think about it going, I don't know what people were thinking of back then to categorize businesses like that. It was a real, I don't know, it was a mistake to me, or it just was,
It
I
was
don't,
pretty bad in the broadcast industry. It was.
it just, to me, if you look at it now, go, that is completely insane. It does not make sense.
Yeah. Was it Peggy Colson Weir? I think the one you were
Oh,
thinking
I
of.
think you've nailed it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that name.
The
Yes.
other female that was really well known, not as a DJ, was Betty Kennedy.
Oh, of
Oh yeah.
course, of course.
And she was amazing,
Yeah.
but more in
So
a talk capacity.
so you do remember a certain song that you were playing doing the overnight show. You have to retell this story of playing Genesis, and a certain writer for a certain band in Toronto picked up on the song and was, writing and thinking of things. And well, tell the story.
Well, that finding out that story was another cosmic kiss for me because as a single mom working nights for next to no money, as which is the way it is in radio, I was really questioning my judgment in choosing that over the computer industry. And so one day I was at home and I was listening to the radio and they interviewed Rush and they said, "What's the story behind the song, The Spirit of Radio?" And somebody said, "Was that All Night Andre?" And the guy said, "Oh, no, that was that woman that you have on the air." And when I heard that, I took that as a cosmic kiss that I had made the right choice to go in that direction. And he went on to tell the story that he was coming back from a gig or recording
This is Neil
episode.
Peart we're talking
Neil
about.
Peart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Ivor. And for those of you that know the Golden Triangle, Hamilton, St. Catharines, there's the Niagara Escarpment goes around that. So he was coming on the highway to the top of the Niagara Escarpment, and below him was this vista of the Golden Horseshoe below him. And at that time, I was playing Genesis Watcher of the Skies. And that song, with that moment of relating this what he was seeing to the music that he was hearing, which was part of the magic of CFNY, how many times our music fit whatever listener was experiencing. That was the spark that inspired them to write the song The Spirit of Radio.
Hey, go
That's
ahead,
pretty
Ivor.
awesome. I was going to say, I've been invited for a second year in a row to take part on Rush Day, which is coming up August the 8th at the Henderson Brewery, and we're going to show the documentary. So there will be probably 1,000 Rush fans in the room on that day, and generally they're from around the world. Last year there was probably, I started asking people like, "Where are you from?" He goes, "I'm from Detroit." "Where are you from?" "I'm from Chicago." "Where are you from?" "I'm from Brazil." "Where are you from?" "I'm from the UK." And I'm like, wow. So
Wow.
people are going to get to see the documentary on Rush Day at Henderson and be able to hear your story. So I just wanted to let you know that, because I just don't believe that a lot of people around the world know it in depth enough.
Well,
And it
I used to tell the story for 2 or 3 years after I heard that bit, and then I put it aside because I thought it was old news. But here it is,
Yeah.
decades later, and people still love that radio station. They still love Rush, and that song still holds the test of time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And how cool was it that, you know, we all, worked at this station that, and especially those years that all the members of Rush were listening to CFNY a lot and were influenced by all those different bands that we were playing, all the new sounds we were playing. And obviously it made it into the production and the lyrics of some of their songs and albums of that time, right?
Oh, yeah. The passion that our audience has for music, it doesn't ever fade. And later in my career, I was able to do research. And what I discovered, mostly every market, 10 to 18% of the market, they didn't want to hear pop. They wanted to hear music that mattered. And we played music that mattered, and we loved it to bits. And the people that listened to us loved exploring music too. I'm still more a new music person than an oldies person.
You know, it's funny, Liz, and we mentioned that like everybody in Rush listened to this, and and I'm going to connect you to what you did later after CFNY becoming a radio consultant. And one of the things that I learned in the last year when we found out this documentary that was coming out was that two of this country's greatest and probably the business's greatest radio consultants, John Pericol and Dave Charles, were closet CFNY fans. And so they would do their business consulting Q107 and consulting these American radio stations and all this clocks and, how many Bob Seger songs to play and how many Meatloaf songs. At the end of the day, they went home and listened to CFNY, which just made me howl. I just was like, really? Yeah. Are you kidding me? Oh, Ivor, big fans, big fans. Whenever I got home, that's what I turned on and listened to. That was from Dave Charles, but I just thought that was so funny that they're like, okay, like, will we turn it off with what we're normally doing? We're going to listen to CFNY. I guess they like the music too.
Well, they were passionate about music, right? Yeah. And later on, they hired me to work with them.
Right.
And they are the ones that trained me in research and consulting.
Yeah.
And they were amazing radio people. Dave for programming and Pericol for marketing and positioning.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, huge. And we'll talk about it in a second. I want to talk about, just before we jump into Streets of Ontario, which is so important. You're at the Little Yellow House and moved to these brand new state-of-the-art facilities at 83 Kennedy Road South. So how was that move for you and your memories of moving into that facility?
Well, because I was the all-night person, I missed all the stories from the daytime, right? So for me, it was a little bit more piecemeal. And one of my first big disappointments was seeing those teeny-weeny speakers in front of me in the studio. And I'm going, what are these teeny weeny little speakers? Where's my sound? I need volume. Of course, with Geets, David Haydu as our engineer, they were Bose speakers and they had one of those boom boxes under the thing. And the sound was freaking awesome.
I remember that was one of the first systems like that. And that Geets was really into the new technology, right? And he bought those, and I thought that too. Like, what are these tiny little boxes? And you kind of didn't see the subwoofer on the floor, but then you cranked it up, and it was like, good God, this sounds fantastic. I forget the name of it, but it was a Bose system.
It was Bose.
Those big speakers that were on the wall in the old control room, and Liz, you might remember, I had a 1967 Firebird convertible for a short time. Those speakers went in the back seat of my car and powered my stereo for a while. But obviously it was a little too big for what it was. But that's where they ended up going, because they were throwing them out, and they said, no, wait a minute, I'll put them in my car. It'll be cool.
Oh, you're such a passionate fan. And the other memory I have from those days is when it was under construction. Back at the Yellow House, I could pop out to my car to get whatever and pop back in. There was never an issue. And so this one day I had a need to go out to my car, and the station was under construction. And I walked out of the station's premises. I heard the door click behind me. And that's when I realized I didn't have a key to get back in. And I had put a long track on, a television track. I'm not sure what the name of it was, 5 minutes, the last cut on on that particular side. And so there I am thinking, it's just going to go click, 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 click. Thankfully, I don't know how I had Brad McNally's number, but he was kind enough to come back and let me back into the station. But for about 15 or 20 minutes, people wondered what happened to me. So that's my other news.
I don't know, did that ever happen to you, Scott? I never got locked out of the radio station, but for some reason, I had it happen to me twice in the same evening. I got locked out of my office, and I had to get a pile of chairs and a desk and climb through the ceiling to get back into my office to get my car keys. And I had a big date that night, and then I went running out. It was during a snowstorm, and I've got my car, get into my car, start the engine up, close the door to scrape the snow off, and lock myself out of the car twice in one night.
Oh boy.
My CFNY stories.
And this is the early 1980s, and it was just a key for the door before fobs and all that technology. We had keys, and I think I had locked myself out at a previous radio station and learned my lesson. So I think I got my own little rope and put the key on the rope around my neck when I went out to the car. But that happened to quite a few people at CFNY, and I got a call a few times because I was close to the radio station up on just off of Kennedy Road, and so I came to the rescue a few times to let
Just
people
like
in.
in grade 6 when you were a latch kid, right?
But there is nothing in radio worse than dead air, and if you talk to anybody in radio, especially those that were on the air, we still have these nightmares, and I still do. At least
True.
once every couple of weeks, I'll have a nightmare about dead air. And for me, really quick story, it's often, very often CFNY, and it's not only trying to find the next record, but it's weird things like I got to play these commercials, which were on carts, and I couldn't find the right commercials. It's all these different disasters happening, and it's a real thing.
The
It
dead
is.
air thing.
I remember when you and I, Scott, being on the air doing live in Toronto, and we needed to make an edit or something, and I was making the edit on the spot while you were talking and
Yes.
trying to cover it. It was like, oh my God, we were so flying by the seat of our pants. It was
Yeah, and you give me the
unbelievable.
stretch it out, keep going, keep going, keep going, and I'm like, anyway, also this weekend playing live. If you, it'll be their second time in Toronto. It's a 4-piece band out of Manchester. Yeah,
It's a very common thing to have those nightmares. I found out from various other radio people, and the effects of it last a lifetime because at the show, I think it was Harmony Hall up near Stouffville, there was a glitch between Alan Cross's
Oh my
introduction.
God.
I know you had to
I
deal
was
with that.
so fucking stressed that night, man.
I know. So I think Alan lasted 4 minutes before he couldn't take it anymore, and then I followed him 6 minutes late, a couple minutes later, down to the basement just to wait out the horrible dead air thing that we were
Well, we
dealing.
were almost, it was just under 20 minutes, the delay from start till when we got it done. And you know what? It's funny because we had and I'm not even going to get into the name, but we had somebody we had worked with who knew his stuff way back in the day, and for some reason on that night it just didn't come together. And then when we did Montreal, we had a similar situation up there, and it's like we were about, because we were trying to get you and Scott on the Zoom, and our promoter up there, he said, well, I got my buddy, he's a real tech expert. Well, he wasn't a tech expert, and he didn't know what he was doing, and they were sitting there doing the usual, unplugging and plugging it back in again, and so we were 15 minutes late in Montreal too. Anyway, if that
We survived,
we got through it, and people still got to see the movie, and
and
it
they
was
loved
fun.
it. It was
And
a
and
great
and, and
crowd
Harmony
Yes.
Hall was probably one of our best nights. So
on
Yeah.
a wonderful venue too.
Yeah.
I'm
So
actually
Streets of
back there
Ontario.
this week. Back there this week.
Oh yeah, you're doing.
We're doing the doing
Give it a
DJ
plug.
with Sadeep Thursday, June the 4th, from 6:30 to 8:30. Say What, Grant Ivans, who's the designer of all the CFNY Video Roadshow logos and all of the CFNY documentary tour posters. He's launching a book, so I'm going to DJ for that this Thursday, and our merch will be on sale at Harmony Hall this Thursday.
Awesome. Okay.
Nice.
Let's talk about Streets of Ontario. So, Liz, take it away. How did this start? How did you get into that? And tell us what Streets of Ontario was for those that don't remember.
Oh, the Streets of Ontario was a name that Marsden came up with, and it represented playing local artists with their independent releases, not demo tapes, but independent releases. And the foundation for that probably started, well, it's a combination of me because the father of my son was a musician. So I was hanging out with musicians. And when I saw how hearing your song on the radio changed your world, if you were a musician, I thought that's what I'd like to do. And then I got this call from a gang down in Kitchener-Waterloo called Artistic Endeavors, and they wanted me to come around to a club, which I'd worked in when I was a younger person. That was kind of like a strange club, very seedy and gentlemen with escorts kind of place. And I said, I can't promote your show until I come around and see what it's all about. So I went to the Kent Hotel one Saturday night. I had 6 nights a week I was working. And when I went there, the Artistic Endeavors crew with Peter Goodwin and David Hyde and Esty Bonkowski and Bert Bonkowski and many more whose names won't come fast enough for us. They had 2 indie bands playing to a packed house. One was a ska band, and there was two levels to the place. It was rocking. So I knew then that that I would be able to say positive things on the air about it. Well, one thing led to another, and Peter and I got to know each other. We became really good friends. And his passion was promoting independent artists. So when we got married, Marsden thought that it would be kind of cute to have this married couple presenting indie bands. But my experience at that time was if there was a circle of DJs and I was the only girl, the record company people only spoke to the boys. So I wanted to be Liz standalone and Peter standalone. So I think we started the show a few months after we got married, so late 82, maybe early 83. And we loved doing that show. It was a project of passion for us. And when we first started it, David was paying us $60 a week to do the show. I took all of that money and I went over to hire a publicist to help me do it, Joanne Smale. You maybe remember Joanne Smale. She knows so much history about the station too, by the way. And so I gave her all that money and asked her to promote it to managers and record labels and things like that. And the great thing about this show is it wasn't parked at 11 o'clock at night. It was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday afternoon, the only day everybody who works in the music industry is home. So as the years went by, we developed a structure to the program where each week Peter would go into the city and he'd audition 2 or 3 independent bands who had recordings in their clubs, and then he'd come back to the air and he'd do a review of what he heard. And so our philosophy was nobody's baby is ugly. So we never trashed a band, but he would offer recommendations on how to make the thing stronger. So we did that for probably 7, 8 years, and we had such good passion for it, and the response was so amazing. We debuted all kind of artists over the years. The first play of Bare Naked Ladies or Sarah McLachlan or Skinny Puppy, and it's actually quite a long list. And don't ask me to remember more because it doesn't go fast enough. It's blonde, you know.
Yeah, well, and similarly, Ivor doing the import show, the first of so many artists being played via the import show, and you guys, with these indie labels and Canadian artists, so huge. It's interesting. I just want to ask you about. You said you didn't play demo tapes. Were there not occasions that you did play some songs that were only on a demo? Okay.
No, but we did play cassettes because that in that era was the beginning of the 4-track recording studio. Right. So bands did not have to hire a studio and a producer and all that to make a recording.
Pretty good quality.
They were releasing recordings on cassettes.
Right. So you were playing in essence demos or cassette home recordings. Some of them.
They were more. It wasn't like a demo thing. It was actually really well done things. So we told the audience, if you have 5 cassettes in a record store, let us know. We'll play a track from your cassette. Right, and that's how we got to the Bare Naked Ladies, is because their very first release was that cassette release. I think I still have an unopened copy of it. So we did play cassettes, but they were for sale cassettes.
And outside of the ones that you mentioned, were there some of those artists that you became quite close with because of that? You started the relationship with them. Is there some people who go, yeah, you know what? I became true friends with X.
I'll jump in with one to start it is, Chalk Circle. Cause I remember, I would talk to Liz and Peter about tracks, or they'd tell me about bands that they've got tapes from and that they've seen live and that are really good. And you should watch out for them. I remember you passed me on, I think, a Chalk Circle cassette, and I took it home and I was like, wow, these guys are great. And, that's one relationship that's how I found out about Chalk Circle.
Yeah. And one of the guys in the band, Tad Winklers, is a Polish fellow.
Yes.
And my father was Polish, and the Polish tradition at Christmas Eve is you set an empty place setting and for the stranger that might show up at your door. And so we invited Tad to come to our home for Christmas dinner. And he eventually ended up living with us on the 3rd floor. and he did a soundtrack for a movie. He put a whole 24-track recording studio on the third floor, which I think influenced my son somewhat about music and recording and all that. So definitely Tad was really wonderful. He was kind enough to translate my father's diaries from Polish to English, which was a great gift. And another person who I got very close to was Jane Siberry.
I was
And we ended up
thinking about
traveling
Jane.
together.
Yeah. And were you also close to Eva Everything too? I
Oh,
don't mean
yes,
to.
I was very close to Eva Everything. And if you guys are looking for pictures of events regarding CFNY, I'm sure she has lots. And she was very helpful the year I became the executive director of Canadian Music Development. I had to produce the Great Ontario Modern Search album, and I didn't have any radio record skills, so she helped me go through that process, the different steps that were involved, and things like that. She was a very big fan of the station and a really talented artist too.
Another memory I remember going to you and Peter's house, and I remember just how organized with all these tapes and bands, how organized you were. And I think it's the very first time that I saw a Mac computer, and I was so impressed. You guys, just how you organized all that and kept that together was impressive.
Well, that Mac computer is a pretty good story too, because I went in, oh, I'm not going to remember the name of the shop, but they had just brought in the Mac SE, and we were looking for some way to manage the data in a database. And so the guy that owned the store up in mid Toronto, he ended up advertising on the station. He became a sponsor of the show. And we bought a Mac SE from him, and I think it cost us $3,000 and took several
Wow.
years to pay off.
No
But at
doubt.
least we had a database and we could produce scripts and things. So
Yeah. I was so jealous. It was like, yeah, who could
Well,
have one of
again,
these
that you know,
babies?
on the radio station salaries that we made, $3,000 was like, oh my God, there's half my year's salary at that point.
Yes,
yeah, I think it took 3 years to pay off.
payment plan. Yep. Oh, yeah. Wow.
And then Peter was very good at managing the library. So singles and cassettes went into a plastic sleeve with any biomaterial.
I
And
remember that. Yeah.
biomaterial for albums went into a plastic sleeve and then inside the album. So we still have, not we, I still have all that stuff. I have like the marketing materials and the releases.
And it must be tough because you also probably got a lot of very, how do I say, mediocre artists submissions. Like, how do you deal with that? How did you let people down gently, or do you give them some encouragement in some areas that need some help?
Well, we were pretty generous, even if it was not so good. We find the best track possible and play it. And we featured almost exclusively Ontario artists, but when artists from the rest of the Canada would come to Ontario, we'd
Right.
include them too. So that's how we ended up with a lot of the West Coast bands back in the day, like Skinny Puppy and others on Network Records.
Did you ever
So
show some love too to some of the bands out of Buffalo, or did we get people from Western New York submitting things too? I would have think we probably would have.
nothing stands out. So, and we wouldn't have paid attention to it unless they actually came to the market. So
Right.
nothing stands out for me.
Okay.
Although later in my career, I had a lot of involvement with Buffalo.
Do you have any memories of interviews, favorite memories of interviews or not? We always have our best and worst interview memories.
I was having a hard time thinking of the worst, but I finally figured out which one was the worst. The interview itself was great in my mind, but David Marsden didn't think so. And that was the time I was a huge fan of Bruce Cockburn.
Mhm.
And there was a song, The Coldest Night of the Year, where he talks about going to a punk club. And Carrie Keeler and I had done the exact same thing he described in that song. We'd gone to a punk club, got home when the sun was coming up. And so I kept asking him to come to the all-night show, and I told him you could play whatever you like. It's the middle of the night. He never made it when I was the all-night person because he had a young child. His daughter, I think, had just been born. And I understood that because my son was also quite young. So finally, he got to come to be on my show when I was doing middays. But he came prepared to do the version that I described to him when I was the all-night chick.
Oh boy.
Mm.
Yes.
Uh,
So we had Israeli army marching music. We had wind flutes in the beach with the wind and the sound of the surf going through it, and other similarly out of mainstream, shall we say, recordings. And I think we were on the air for about an hour or so. And afterwards, I was banned from having any interviews for 6 months because of that
oh my God.
one
Oh,
show.
wow.
And what year would that have been? Would that been
Yeah.
of like maybe 83 or something like that? Or
It,
as
it was definitely in the new studios. I was off the all night show. It probably, and I was doing middays, so probably 86, 87
oh,
in there.
okay. So even later. Yeah. I mean, it was funny how things like that happen. I mean, I think, we were used to doing things and we had done it those ways for years. And then all of a sudden it was a wake up call, and I remember at one point, James Scott, he plays a track from Judas Priest, and Don Burns is there, and he goes, "That's it, no more Judas Priest on the air." Like it just ended like that. It would just all of a sudden like we're not playing that band anymore or whatever, right? And so I think I just remember those types of incidences like we can't do that anymore. It just doesn't work
Yeah,
anymore.
that ship has long sailed.
Yeah.
So some more positive outcomes was I had the chance to interview Timothy Leary.
Wow.
They brought him into the studio. They were promoting the new computer technology. We were told not to ask anything about LSD or anything like that. So
And
that
did
was
you
very,
anyway, or what? Or did you? Because
no, I was a good little camper
oh,
on that.
thank you. Thank you for that. It's a publicist's worst nightmare. I was, when I was on the publicity, and that was always like I'd walk into Much Music or something, and God, Steve Anthony usually said, "These are the things you can't talk about," and inevitably, and it wasn't just him. Lots of other people. They went to those
I,
sessions anyway.
I got that same kind of direction when Jonah Armatrading, I was a huge fan of hers back then, came into the studio and I was told, you cannot say anything about politics or religion. But somehow we filled 2.5 hours of content anyways. And who else? Graham Chapman from Monty Python.
Wow.
Oh,
He came into the studio once, and my son was a huge Monty Python fan. He was 5 or 6, by the way, and he was a huge Monty Python fan. Could it be the scene with the bare-breasted ladies running across? Could be. So he
Mhm.
was super excited, and he offered Graham some Timbits because what do you do when back then at least?
Mhm.
And Graham said he couldn't take it because he was diabetic, and I don't think he lived much longer than that. That was a pretty good memory. Another memory I have little snippet memories is
Mm.
when I interviewed. I don't remember the guy from Violent Femmes, but remember we
Gordon
weren't playing
Cato.
them, then we were
Yeah.
playing them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when he came into the studio, he had the most amazing blue eyes. Like it was just like totally mesmerizing. And you remember Level 42?
Hmm.
Well, the front guy for that band was the drummer, and he came into the studio and somebody was operating the board because I was in that booth with him. And at one point he takes off his shirt and he's a drummer. So he's like muscular, like
Uh-huh.
and so like a good radio person, I'm describing what I'm seeing. So yeah, there were many good memories of artists over the years in terms of interviews. I feel so blessed that I had those opportunities.
And just on memories, do you have any other CFNY memories, whether it's the Little Yellow House or 83 Kennedy Road, or anything that you saw in the documentary or didn't see in the documentary you wanted to add to?
Well, you touched on the creative department. We had an amazing creative department with Maureen Bully, who was the creative director, and then she had amazing production talent under her,
Yeah.
and she had amazing writers with her and voice actors too. So that was one thing. Another thing that got kind of left behind on the floor was a very important aspect of what CFNY did, which was not music. We had an enormous amount of commitment to news and information on the station, more than
Mhm.
most radio stations. Most
Yes.
radio stations had to do 3 hours a week of news, and I think we were doing, I don't remember the exact number, but probably getting close to 10. We had 11 people in the news department, which was the same size of news department as CFRB, the leading news talk station in the market at that time. So we had reporters covering things, and we had great people anchoring the news. And when my later career, I did a lot of research. And when you ask people, why do you tune on the radio? Local news and information is the number one most important thing they always claim. And most stations today have abandoned news. It's called entertainment today.
Yeah. I mean, I think with
Totally.
CFNY, they'll remember that, they do remember some of the news people, but, the music's always um, had the spotlight, I think, more. But to your point, yes, I mean, I did an interview because I do the Edge Time Machine quite regularly, and it came up in a conversation. It's like, how many people worked at CFNY in like mid 1980, like 85, 86? And I'm sitting there counting it up, and I'm like, I think we had like, 60 people or 65 people or whatever. And I said, how many people are at CFNY now? And he's like, on one hand, he was counting. I think we got 6 to 8 actually on the team, but everybody else is like doing things nationally. And I'm like, oh, okay,
Oh.
that's how much it's changed now, right? So,
Mm.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because, yeah, even reporters, like a reporter, there was a full-time position or one or two positions where there were reporters that went down to Toronto to City Hall and gathered the stories, with a tape
police
machine.
department, right?
Yeah, right.
And the tow trucks were our friends too. So anything that
Right.
happened in the city, we had a guy on the tow trucks circle that would call us. I'm not remembering his name. So we were kind of plugged into the whole city, and I think that's one of the things that made that station so special. We actually talked about the city, the comedy clubs, the drama, the theater, the music shows, what was happening in all different levels of the community. So I thought that was pretty darn cool.
Do you have some good roadshow memories at all?
Yes, you never would play the slow songs.
Moments in Love. That was the slow
Moments.
song,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
There were so
Yes.
many, and these young teenagers, they don't get to like
and the
body press unless
Frankie
it's
Yeah.
a slow
goes to
song.
Frankie Goes to Hollywood. The Power of Love was a big slow song on
Oh
the road
yeah,
show.
that was.
Okay.
No, we had our selection of songs. It just wasn't as many as
Yeah, you
maybe some
want.
people would have liked to. But thank you, good point, Liz. We could have played more slow jams.
Yeah, well, that's the only way the kids can like do the first body thing
We
together.
were we were very responsible DJs. We wanted to keep
Right.
keep them on the dance floor.
I wouldn't go that far. I know
No,
about
we
the beard,
weren't.
so you're out of luck there.
Says the DJ who played Girls on Film video and got us kicked out of the Catholic high school board in Peel Halton for 2 years.
Oh my
All right. The
goodness.
extended mix. Yes. The band one. Yeah. Good one.
Oh, that reminds me of the time I played the Marianne Faithfull track without realizing I played the wrong track.
Oh, you
Oh, yeah.
did.
We
Did you
know
play
that
Why'd
one.
You Do It? Yes, okay.
Yeah.
F-bombs all the way through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that on
So,
was that on the afternoon show or the all night show?
yeah.
Thankfully, the all-night show, or I would have been fired.
So
I think, there is a list, honest to God, of songs that were played on the radio station that we would be doing, not jail time, but maybe our license would be pulled if
Cross
they
the
were
line a
tried to play
little.
them today. And we played them and never even gave them a second thought.
I remember being in a hairdresser thing and saying, "Why are you playing this station? You should be playing CFNY." And so they went and changed the channel. Then a Violent Femme track came up with the F word in it. Back to Chum FM.
Oh, I
Yeah.
forgot about those local
Yeah.
businesses,
I
right?
think we're limited to certain
We were-
dentist offices.
I think we were a station that spawned headphone sales so people could listen.
True that.
I will tell you
Earbuds.
though, I just encountered for the first time the guy who bought the sponsorship for the CFNY Video Roadshow for the Milk Marketing Board, and he was just like a huge fan and believed in the radio station, and he had the power to do this. So he was the guy responsible for that years and years of sponsorship that we had with Milk. And he was like, I think about guys like that. I think it was him and the guy from Carlsberg, a guy named Duncan McKinnon, if you ever remember him. And those were the guys in the early days that like kept us on the air. Like if it wasn't for them, we probably couldn't have, continued to do what we did. But damn the ratings. These people love the station and they had the power to buy the programs or buy the sponsorship. And I thought these guys were great. So
We had great allies. I mean, if you ever saw audio equipment ad, every tuner was tuned to 102.1 in the ad.
Oh yeah.
yes.
It was a cool thing. Yes.
And I know that some of us would go into the stereo stores and tune it to the radio station just for fun anyway. Right?
That was one of my
Absolutely.
tricks.
Yes, of course.
Yes. So just to wrap this up, I want to talk about how your days ended at CFNY, how that came to an end, and then there's so much else you did after that, which we're going to touch on here. So first of all, the last days at CFNY for you, and what happened?
When the station had to renew its license, they wanted to make sure that the story of how they help local talent would be part of the story. And so they appointed me, first time ever, Director of Canadian Talent Development. And they
And
took
who
me
was
to this,
that, Liz? Who was that who appointed you for that?
remember that bad year, 88?
Oh, the
That
mistake of
guy,
88.
the mistake of 88.
Mr.
And
Fonda.
so they gave me new air times, which I really liked, and some other things. They took me to the CRTC hearing. They got their license renewed, and then they brought me in to claw back the upgrades they had given me.
Hmm.
And I'm not bitter about it because it actually worked out well overall in the end. At that time, I had just learned about constructive dismissal. And for those that don't know, you don't quit. You wait for them to realize you're not going to reach a deal. Then they have to pay you to go away.
Yes.
So at that time, so eventually I think it was 2 hours or more, they realized that was the situation, Bill Hutton and that other guy. And
The other guy.
And at that time, I had already been approached to present a Canadian talent showcase in New York City at the New Music Seminars, because I was going to those from 82 on. And so Bill Hutton said to me, "You're going to go, you have a budget, just don't buy a fur coat." And then they paid me well to go away. So I left shortly thereafter with a nice staff party and everything, nice presents too. Peter stayed on doing streets for a few months longer, and then he never discussed it with me. He too resigned from the station, and that was the end of the Streets of Ontario.
Right.
But it was a good, what, 8 years?
8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we helped so many bands. And because of the
Yes.
work we were doing on the air, one of the other things we did was started writing reviews for Music Express magazine, which was distributed in record stores throughout Canada and the United States.
Yeah,
So
no,
we
Keith Sharp had a good distribution with that. I think he was in all the Thrifties and Levi or whatever Thrifty stores across the country too. So they always had a good reach across Canada, as I recall.
and then eventually the United States. And so the column was called the Independent Network. So we got an amazing amount of product from across North America for that period of time. So when I left the station, I thought, well, that's that, because there's no such thing as an alternative format. I don't even know if we described ourselves using that label at that time. It used to be known as Progressive FM. And so I thought my
Well,
career was over basically, because a DJ on a station that plays punk, not exactly marketable.
and I think
And
modern
then,
rock was kind of the new
Well,
term,
it
right?
kind of morphed into modern rock, which is just to this day you look back on like, ugh, I think of modern rock and yeah, 1990 to 1996 or something, and then just like out of hell with that. That didn't work
I
either.
hated the term too, Ivor. And my
Awful.
first thing, just not to go off on a tangent on it, but my first thing was like, okay, rock, we're already identifying just one area of the music the station played. Wait a minute here. Wait a minute. It's modern music, not just rock. And I thought,
That was a way to
and
sort of like just narrow it, like this is
yes,
how we're going to
yes,
do it.
yeah,
Oh, we don't
yeah.
have room for Depeche Mode now because it's not modern rock. It's not
yeah.
rock. And
Yes, or where's Kate Bush? Is she, or some of these other artists?
where's
Anyway,
Fat Gadget? Like
yeah,
it's
Oh my God, the list of bands we could rhyme off here.
Mhm.
So what
yes.
happened after that was there was a call for a new license to be given to the city of Toronto. And because of the work we had done with local artists, we had developed a lot of goodwill around our names. And so I was approached by Joint Communications, home of John Pericol, Dave Charles, and David Oakes, to solicit letters of support for their application in partnership with the East Coast broadcaster to get letters of supporting their application. So we had a meeting together, and because of long story that won't fit into this, I knew the value of goodwill at that point at that point in history, and they offered me $200 a week to sell my goodwill, and I said no, thank you, this won't do. When we finally agreed on a number, it was $1,500 a week to go sell my goodwill. And in the process of that, they got to know me. And even though I had zero background to be a consultant, as we went through the hearing process, I took on more responsibilities. At the end of the hearing process, they offered me a job to become one of their consultants. And so I moved into the top research and consulting firm in Canada and was mentored by three of the best in their various areas
Yes.
and started working in Canada. One of my first station launches was Z95 out in Vancouver with Brad Phillips. And from there, I ended up going into the States. And the first time I learned research was helping a station in Boston develop a new format for adult women. And it turns out I had a real knack for seeing numbers and hearing the station. And we had research that would map every format available in that market. We were doing some amazing cutting edge research stuff. So from there, I started working in the States and I helped launch various stations across the United States as part of my career.
And Liz, just going, stopping you for a second there in Boston, how did that work out? Because that market had WFNX and WBCN, both, alternative radio stations, and you doing what you were doing. And how did that work out as far as going
Well,
up against them?
it was urban AC that I was doing.
Oh, okay. So it was
And
something completely
they
different.
got scared of the idea that we were playing black music for white people. But when we researched in New York City in 93, there was a dance music station there, Hot 97. They lost one of their primary styles, freestyle dance. So they're thinking, now what do we do? So we went in and we did a market map of every format in Manhattan. And MS Broadcasting was the client. And when we got the data back, we only spoke to whites and Hispanic, which is how Americans talk.
Mhm.
And when we got the data back, what we saw was there was a huge demand for hip hop, soul,
No
and
kidding.
R&B. And of course, New York had been doing breakdancing and stuff from the 70s. So by the 90s, they had listeners in the 40-ish age range that were interested in rap and hip hop. And so we helped launch the very first hip hop station in North America. And we were sitting around that table at the Millennium Hotel, and Emmis had brought in their whole staff. That was their philosophy. Everybody has to know what's going on. And then looking around the table that day, we realized we were looking at a major shift in musical style preferences based on age. Like when we went from big bands to rock, we were going into this hip hop thing. We did a map in Toronto, and the upper age for that music style was 17. So you could not do it in Toronto then. You can do it in Toronto today and kill big.
It was always frustrating being on the label side, the movement to have a hip hop radio station, and it just always ended up being whatever CKLN on Saturday afternoons, and then Buffalo, it was always BLK, and then whenever we got what we got in Toronto, it just was, for whatever reason, there was always forces against it, which drove me crazy, because if I looked at the bottom line of what the labels were making, the biggest share of our market, and it's still the same today, is hip hop. And radio just never got the plot as far as I was concerned on it.
Well, they think of it as black artists, black audience. It's not that. It's a whole generational thing, not a skin color thing.
Stupidity as to what the people like,
I know. I also got to work with a lot of alternative stations. 89X in Detroit, brought them up to SharePoints, launched Q101 in Chicago. Also did a format later in Chicago, Heart and Soul Oldies, which was so much fun. And then in Lincoln, Nebraska, I did another alternative station. I worked with K-Rock in Los Angeles, and I was hired for Des Moines, Iowa to launch a new station. They understood how I presented the idea of doing alternative in that market. In our first book, the station was 3 months old at that time. We became the #1 alternative station in all of the United States, beating out 120 other stations.
Sorry, which station was that?
KKDM in Des Moines, Iowa.
And tell me something about your time at K-Rock. Now, K-Rock to me, and CFNY used to get compared to K-Rock all the time. I've heard David talk about it. And to me, the comparisons were nonsense, because K-Rock played records like Top 40 played records. So I I would never have the ear to hear the same Depeche Mode song or New Order song 50 or 60 times in a week. Now, when you were there, did you change that sort of train of thought on that heavy rotation on those songs? Because to
We
me,
had we had started working with K Rock, and we flew down to meet the management team of it, and things were going really well. And then somebody on air did this spoof where they claimed they knew somebody who had been murdered, and that just created a they knew someone who had murdered somebody, and that created such a huge backlash. The station cut off everybody while it recovered from that really bad uh,
Wow.
whatever
public
incident
profile.
on the air. Yeah. I just say the K Rock thing because I kind of look at other, when we had a relationship we had Lee Carter on and he'd done some work for WFNX. And to me, like FNX and WLIR were stations that were more like CFNY than K Rock ever was, even though we both had reputations for both breaking records,
Mm-hmm.
but and artists. We sort of had reputations for more breaking artists than records themselves, although we certainly can pin a number of records that we would have broken, but we did it very differently than those other radio stations.
Yeah. And when I launched a station in Buffalo called The Planet, we started playing local bands. And
Mm.
we were we were given a commendation by Buffalo City Hall because when you start playing local bands, you start filling the local bars. When you start filling local bars, you've got the
Mm-hmm.
restaurants. So we were given credit for bringing back life to the downtown core. So our baby band in Buffalo was the Goo Goo Dolls.
Yes.
And we were told if they could sell 3,000 units in Buffalo, they would be marketed internationally. And a baby band when I was in 89X in Detroit was Sarah McLachlan.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So I was given credit for breaking Sarah McLachlan out of it.
You know,
So
89X was a great radio station. I really, really enjoyed them for a time frame there in the early 90s. They were one of my radio stations when I was a promo guy. And to me, they were like a continuation at the time of what CFNY was during the late days of Spirit of Radio days to me.
yeah, there
So,
it's I like stations that are exploring new music
so
and the audience does too.
and that list, that's just that's not all of them, but there's so many there, Liz, that you helped influential in, and all these different markets, all these different formats. So just tell everybody about the Rosalie Awards. So you took and won the award in 2014, and this just brings us back to women in the industry, and think of those first days of just getting into radio, and look at all the things and stations and formats you've influenced, and rightfully so, getting this award. Just tell everybody that don't know what the award is and what that was about.
Well, I became known as somebody who understood Canadian music. And so I was hired first by Music Match and then Yahoo and then ultimately Sirius Radio in Canada to create an all Canadian format. So I started working with Gary Slate and Pat Holliday. And about that time, I was also on the committee that planned the radio conferences on an annual basis. And I was the only woman on that committee. And I missed a meeting. And so the boys decided they'd have an event, uh, a panel at the music industry conference for women. And everyone I'd ever been to was women whining. And that's not the way that you go forward. You don't complain your way out of a problem like that. So I decided, having observed that when men in radio, if somebody lost their job, the other men in radio helped them find a new job. And I thought women should have that same sort of community that they can help each other. So I started off with that year with, I think it was '03. I started off the first time with a breakfast for women in radio, and you did not have to be a member of the conference because there weren't enough attending the conference. So we started bringing women together at a breakfast, each table hosted by a woman who had the career to help the newbies into it. So by 2006, when I was working with Gary Slate at Sirius, he said, we need to have an award. And so we decided, because Pat Holliday had been part of the big story out of Detroit with Rosalie Tremblay, he suggested we have the first award go to the person who had broken the most bands because of her incredible ears, programming out of Windsor, Detroit. So that's how it started with Rosalie. And then we were fortunate enough to celebrate other people like Denise Donlin and Marilyn Dennis and people like that. And over the years, we got bigger and bigger stages. And finally, in 2011, this woman named Nancy Brown Daco, I handed the reins over to her because I don't have corporate contacts. I'm more in the music industry side. And she's now made that a major part of the annual Canadian Music and Radio Conference. So so in 2014, I was nominated and I was given the acknowledgement of being one of the pioneers. And this year at the event now called Departure, the conference called Departure, we honored 5 young women plus 1 woman who had as a special award because now radio is just part of a larger media landscape. And the thing that made me so happy is to see how many women there are in radio. Like there's Tammy Cole over at Chorus Radio. She's responsible for 36 radio stations. And then you have Hillary White, who's running the Bell Radio empire. And then and women are becoming presidents of radio companies.
I look at Julie Adam. Julie Adam, who is at Rogers, is now running Universal. I just see today that Josie Dye is now the official morning host of Chum FM starting in another week and a half. So congratulations to Josie Dye. So
that's amazing.
Oh,
so we've come a long way, baby, in the last 23 years.
I know.
I'm so happy.
Josie's one who'd love to play. Josie's one, if she could, she still loves her alternative music. I know she would love to play the CFNY playlist if she could. But and I was going to ask, did you also didn't May Potts go in at one point? I can't remember for one of those awards, or did you not? There was somebody who went in and you might have given them the award. I can't remember. I could be wrong.
Oh, May Potts did win. I can't remember exactly what year. Maureen Bully also won because she was around the world with her stuff. No, and one woman.
That's 3. I'm counting 3 CFNYers right there.
Yeah.
And
then we did have May's daughter got into radio, but then that didn't quite work out. But she really wanted to, and things had changed. Yeah. But unfortunately,
she's doing well over at CBC.
Right. So there you go. So there's still a home in certain places. So
yeah.
So the world with women in radio and other media platforms has changed so beautifully. So I was feeling really pumped about that this past month when I attended Departure.
And Peggy Ciccone got the award posthumously, I think. Oh no, she got it before she passed. I do recall because it was during COVID and they had to put it off a year. And I could be confusing that with the Juno one too. But
I didn't hear about that. She used to be part of the Rock and Roll Radio Girls.
Yes. Peggy was a peggy in that one. And
I've got a great picture of 4 of us ladies together at some point. And who else was amazing?
Peggy Ciccone's business card. You know about her business card? I don't know if you knew.
Remind me.
So it says it was QOFA. It stood for Queen of Fucking Everything. And that was on her cards. And Peggy I used to see her at the Junos every year, but I never saw her at the awards. And I'm like, hey, Peg, are you going to the awards? She goes, Ivor, it's a TV show. I'm watching it in my hotel room. Okay, whatever you want. And, she was with Rush from day one with that band, right? And in 2015, we went to the first show in Oklahoma and we're walking around Tulsa and just about to walk in the front gate and there's a giant security guard. And Peggy wasn't a big woman. And the guy looks at her, he goes, where do you think you're going? She goes, wherever the fuck I want. And walks straight in.
Awesome.
God bless.
We love Peggy.
You had to be a tough chick to be in the record industry. Remember Linda Daw?
Absolutely. I remember Linda Daw.
She was another one that took no prisoners.
And
a very close friend to me.
Yeah, a few of them out there. But Peggy was one of the good ones in it and was a good friend. We rented cottages together. We went on vacation together. We did a lot of things with Peggy outside of business.
So blessed. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, Liz, so much for your time. And we could do another 9 episodes. There's so many other stories. We look forward to seeing you at the final screening of The Doc, the extended mix in Brampton on the 6th. Everybody, there's still some tickets available at the Q&A for that as well, too. So we look
I love
forward
the
to that.
extended mix, by the way, guys, and the audience does too.
Yes.
They laugh and applaud all the
Liz,
way.
we probably learned our lesson on the road shows, that doing the road shows afterwards, people like to stay for a couple of drinks and then they look at their watch because they're in our age group. I gotta go, but maybe we didn't play enough slow songs. I don't know.
Okay, thanks again, Liz. Again, we'll see you in Brampton on the 6th.
Yeah.
Look forward, Liz. Thanks so much.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
this.
gentlemen. It's fun reminiscing with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you.